Welcome, everybody. It feels like we're in a pandemic. You're also spread out. Welcome to the Bridgewater Hall. It's always a relief, the second day of a Congress, to come back and people have returned. Especially those who were at the cocktail clutch till midnight last night with me, which I'm slightly regretting this morning. We had some lovely feedback from you about the first day of the Congress, which is we're very grateful. Thank you for that. And hopefully what we've got to offer today, tomorrow and Friday lives up to the way we started out. A bit of housekeeping. So, excuse me. A bit of housekeeping. There are no planned fire alarms today. So if the alarm goes, please leave through the nearest exit and follow the guidance that you'll get from the Bridgewater Hall, the very excellent Bridgewater Hall front house team, who are all wearing grey shirts. So please follow them. There are other housekeeping things. There are two sets of video capture going on today. So first of all, ISPA are doing some filmed interviews for a compilation around the 75th anniversary of ISPA with a filming station on the 4th floor foyer. So those of you who have not signed up, already signed up, feel free to go up there if you want to take part. You should be so moved. Also at lunch today, the Manchester production team are having a roving camera capturing interviews for our post-Congress evaluation. We would love you to participate if you want to, but it's absolutely totally optional. It just helps us in our reporting back to the funders and stakeholders. Fortunately, Ronnie Penoy has managed to escape Zurich. Are you here, Ronnie? Hey! And we've rescheduled Ronnie for 3:30 today, immediately after session 4. And I'm really pleased to see you. Great. Finally, before we move on into the rest of the programme, there's a feature this afternoon called Brewing Ideas. And this is a slightly reworked coffee clatch. For those of you who are ISPA veterans, you'll know about coffee clatch. Clatch meaning, it's sort of, my understanding is it's sort of New York vernacular for conversation. Is a chance to have conversations. And what we've done is we've got the panel members from the sessions that we had yesterday and today who will be at tables for you to have follow-up conversations. So quite often at conferences, you hear something on the platform, there's been not enough time to have a conversation about it, and you want to have a follow-up. So that's what we're doing at Brewing Ideas this afternoon. And there'll be a little bit of interaction, which we'll tell you about later on, and more details of that later. So that's enough blather from me. We are really proud of our hall in Manchester. It's one of the crown jewels of the city. It's really great to also welcome Bridgewater Hall into membership of ISPA. I think that's a round of applause for Bridgewater Hall. Thank you for joining ISPA. By the way, colleagues, membership is still available if anybody wants to join. So here to welcome you to the building and tell you a bit more about the work is Chief Executive Andrew Bolt. Please welcome Andrew.
Good morning, everybody, and it's lovely to see you, and welcome to our place, the Bridgewater Hall. It's a delight to have you here. Just a few things I'd like to talk about with regard to the hall that you may be interested in. We do about 300 events, etc., on the main stage here a year, so the stage operates about 300 days a year. In 2019 was a big year for us, and we had the stage operating for 333 days. We're very glad to be back from the pandemic, and it's lovely to meet in person and to be able to have real face-to-face performances and events like this. We are in a very fast and diversifying growth of the city. The city is growing to a point where it's expanding at the seams, and you can see that the buildings that are going up around the place are just everywhere. So in that situation, the building being opened in 1996, the market of course has changed and the diversity of our audiences has changed, and so we are looking to reflect the Manchester of today, not the Manchester of yesterday, and we're looking for what this building should be doing going forward into the future. We of course therefore work with as many groups as we possibly can. We have a very active community engagement arm, and we like that to reflect something for everybody at Bridgewater Hall. And to that end, I talked to my staff and team about the ultimate owners of the venue, which is not the council, although the council, of course, is the owner of the building as such, but the real owners of the building are the people out in the street. Whoever they are, they're the owners of the building, and there should be something for, at least something each year for everybody who is an owner of the building in Manchester. So our program reflects that, and we work hard, of course, like all venues around the world and organisations, to care for our planet, and we look to support the city and their zero carbon targets, and that's working really well for us, but there's always more to do. Just before I wind up, a fun factoid: the building was built by the European Union, funded as such, vested to the city, of course, but it is built entirely on springs. So no part of the building touches terra firma, and as you walk out the door, you'll find that there's a rubber strip around the building, and that's to isolate it for acoustics. And of course, the acoustics in this place are very precious to us, and so we look after that aspect of the building very closely. We are very fortunate that we have two beautiful symphony orchestras that are here on a regular basis. The Halle Symphony Orchestra is actually resident in the venue, one of the great orchestras of the world, and we're privileged also to have the BBC Philharmonic as well that performs here on a regular basis. We have many different kinds of events, and you'll see that reflected in the various brochures that you see in the foyers, including our international concert series, and perhaps there's a few of you here that might represent organisations that might like to appear here at some point. With that, I'll say welcome to you all. Thank you for coming, and I'll be in and about the venue from time to time, and I'll be happy to talk to you about what we do in greater detail. Have a great conference. Thank you. Bye.
I haven't done anything yet. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here. My name's Tarek Iskander. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a Middle Eastern man in my 40s with black hair and brown eyes, and I get really nervous doing any kind of public speaking, so I put on my favorite orange jeans to try to distract you today. I'm Artistic Director and CEO of an organization called Battersea Art Centre in London. We're a multi-art form, contemporary performance space, dance, theatre, loads of work with young people, loads of programs I won't go into here, and a lot of international program, international exchange, so please do come and talk to me. But I'm going to introduce my wonderful panel in a second, who are going to host this talk about arts and the next generations. Before we do that, we'd quite like to get to know you a little bit, because hopefully we'll make lots of time for questions in the second half. So I'm going to ask you all a quick set of questions. If you can put your hand up, and if you don't want to or can't put your hand up, make a noise or make yourself available in some way. But can we just kind of establish who's here? So how many people are coming from the UK today? Great, I love the cheering. That's a great start. How many from North America? South America? Mainland Europe? Asia? Good shout from Asia. Australia? Woo! And how many of you describe yourselves as primarily artists? And how many sort of administrators or managers? Great, a lot. Teachers, educators?
Oh, that's not a lot.
Not many. And how many of you are just define category and do everything? So today is all about young people. How many people here are under 18 years old? Yeah, maturity doesn't count, Dave. Under 25? Wow, okay, 25 to 45? 45 to 70? Anyone want to own up to being over 70? Congratulations, well done. Last few questions. How many of you think that a lot of your work involves working with young people or about the young people in the next generation? And how many people here talk to a young person under 16 every day that you do your job? Great, a great number of you. How many of you want these questions to stop? Okay, all right. I'm going to introduce my wonderful panel, so we're going to go around. Keisha, start with you.
Hello, just doing a little mic check, cool. Hi everyone, so I'm Keisha Thompson. I'm from Contact in Manchester, which is literally 20 minutes from here. So if you're here exploring, then please do take a trip down and visit us. We look like a big castle. My pronouns are she, her, and for anyone that needs it, I'm a 160 centimetered brown woman with some braids and big eyes, and I'm wearing a beige suit.
Thank you. My name's Lilli Geissendorfer. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white European woman with blonde short hair, currently wearing a blue and white striped dress. I'm director of Jerwood Arts. I've been director since 2018, and we're a private foundation in London that works across the 4 nations of the UK to improve conditions for early career artists. Before that, I was a theatre producer. At the Almeida, at the Arcola, I co-founded a new writing festival in Suffolk. So it's fair to say that while Jerwood Arts funds all disciplines and genres and art forms, my heart is in the performing arts. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Hansen. I am a white woman, 50 plus, light brown hair, and dressed in all navy blue from top to bottom today. I'm German-born, spent 9 years studying and working in Canada, and have lived in the Netherlands for the past 25 plus years. I have a business degree, but I've worked in the performing arts, or worked in the performing arts for more than 30 years before switching to the education sector. I'm now executive director of ILIA, which is an international network of art universities and art academies. Those academies offer education in all disciplines of the arts, so my life these days is completely filled with other art forms, also performing arts. We have almost 300 members, 350,000 students, and we have a strong global connection. And I am an ISPA member since 1996, which makes me a bit of a dinosaur.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jodi, Bickerton. Sign name, take your left hand, throw it backwards over your left shoulder, and again with your right, like you're tossing your hair back with a bit of attitude. That's my sign name. I am a white woman with long strawberry blonde hair. I have green eyes. My left eye is usually closed unless I'm shocked or surprised. I'm about 4'11", and I'm wearing all black today. I'm here representing Grey Eye Theatre Company. Some of you may already know us. We are a deaf and disabled-led touring professional theatre company, and we aim to bring world-class theatre to the stages across the UK and internationally. We have coined the term the aesthetics of access, which we are very grateful that so many have then taken on that as a legacy to embed in their own work. So that is about embedding sign language, creative captioning, and audio description into all our performance work. So every show you go to, the Grey Eye show, is fully accessible for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent audiences. My role is the Creative Learning Director at Grey Eye. I think I have the best job because I get to work with young people all the time, and they're very much the heart of our organisation as well.
Great, thank you all. Thanks so much for introducing yourselves. And so I guess we've got a really vital but an absolutely enormous topic to try to cover today in art and the next generations. And I think the thing about this topic is, depending on our own particular lens on it, we all come at it from a slightly different angle. So when we talk about arts and generations, sometimes we're talking about opportunities or jobs. Sometimes we're talking about inclusion and diversity. Sometimes what we mean is participation. Sometimes it's co-creation, and so on and so forth. There's different ways of looking at this. So I guess just going to invite you, just to get us kicked off, is let's think positively. Let's imagine a future 10 to 20 years down the line. What does a utopian future of arts in the next generation look like from your point of view? You can start with you, Jodi, and we'll go around.
It's a massive question. I had a really long list to bring, but I won't go through it all. I think utopia, for me, when I'm thinking about deaf and disabled and neurodivergent artists, audiences, young people, I'm thinking about how you get into the industry in the first place. So my utopia would be that we could stroll, wheel and glide into drama training, that it was accessible, that we could do the same when we go to the theatre, and that, you know, our young company could go to any show rather than having to find the one that's just signed or just audio described. Because I think we talk a lot about access to the arts for young people, and disabled young people are often left off that. And I think the utopia for me is all about access as a human right. So we don't have the choice to say no, to deny entry to a training course, to a space, to employment. It's absolutely part of all our DNA that we are giving right to, access, and access as an actual human right. And when we put it that way and start looking at it not as an add-on, and I know we've been, as an industry, talking about this for years and years, and I will continue to get on panels like this and talk about it until things do change. So let's hope in 10 years' time, we're wheeling, walking, gliding into those spaces with ease.
Right. Thanks, Jodi. Maria?
Thank you, Jodi. I think my perspective comes very much from the perspective of the art universities, all of whom are extremely busy with this very topic. What does that future look like? We are engaged in a project at the moment that imagines the art school in society in the year 2045. So that's an interesting conversation. I look at it very much from a societal point of view. I think I really do believe society needs artists involved everywhere in all decision making, because there is a transformation required. You are all aware, of course, of all these incredible challenges that society is faced with. And Jodi has just identified a few of them. Climate change is another one. War and political conflict is another one. And there are so few artists involved in all of that decision making. And society, industry, cultural and creative industry is screaming for talent and people that are skilled in a way that is interdisciplinary. And my utopia is that in 10, 20 years, my community, the art universities, will be able to provide that part, to train young artists to make that contributions in whichever way is fruitful to them.
Thank you, Maria. Lilli?
Here, I can sign up to both those utopias. My utopia is grounded in my eternal optimism. I believe that imagination is our greatest asset, and with all the challenges ahead of us, as long as we hold on to that and invest in that, 20 years from now, so 2043, what could that look like? I hope we would be at net zero day to day, that we would have a government and a society that fully invests in creative education and believes in that in schools and all the way through, that we've ended unequal access to the arts, and that's both from a participatory and a performer perspective, and that basically we've cracked Oscar Wilde's maxim that we're all able to live up to be yourself, everyone else is already taken, and that ethos is running across our world.
Thank you so much, Lilli. Always good to quote Oscar Wilde, I think. Keisha.
Cool, yeah, and apologies, I forgot to say before, I'm the Chief Exec / Artistic Director. And Contact is quite utopic, is that a word? It is now. And that's a great honour for me to be part of an organisation that is so progressive and is quite expansive in its view of the arts and the way that it invites people into the space to explore what that is for them. So I'm quite deliberate in not really wanting to know what it looks like in 20 years' time. I think it would be a bit sad if I could literally just predict that. So what I'm interested in is just making sure that Contact stays relevant and responsive to the people that it represents, and that it's still seen as being a space where people can come and be themselves. So yeah, for me, I'm very aware of what the climate is, and I hope that things are better economically, and that the arts is seen as being more pervasive and culturally relevant across the country, and that young people are valued for their opinions and their skills and their experiences, but that's something that is very much a reality at Contact now. So for me, it's just about maintaining that and making sure that what does that look like in 20 years' time? I don't know, but I'll try my best to maintain that.
And you'll still be there in 20 years to see?
No, not at all. When I got interviewed, because we get interviewed by a youth panel and a senior panel, they were like, what's your 10-year plan? I went, I'm not going to be here in 10 years. I'm not. I said, one of you should be. I said, I'm going to be gone by about 7 years, I think. Yeah, so I'm very much invested in making sure that the reason why I'm even in this position is because I was connected with Contact since I was 15 and was very much encouraged to see myself as a leader. So for me, in terms of what Contact will look like in the future, again, I could be like, oh, should it be run by a bunch of 10-year-olds? That's a bit ridiculous. But it just needs to make sure that youth leadership and decision-making in that is still very much in the fabric.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, what's great about the responses you've given us so far is, again, as expected with a topic like this, we've covered a whole range of issues. So we're talking about access and inclusion for young people, what that could look like if we do some major transformation work, education and skills and training, and what those opportunities look like. This sort of, just to paraphrase a bit, like the policy environment or the policy conditions or the governmental way that things operate. And finally, we're also touching on youth leadership and also how young people can be themselves rather than have things done to them, which is very often how us as cultural organizations operate. I think all of us in this room, though, would recognize that it feels like we're very far away from that in many of our contexts. You know, access inclusion is nowhere near what it needs to be. Often young people are denied any access to skills or training. Often, certainly I speak for the UK, the environment can feel actively hostile to young people and treat them as a problem. And we're certainly not seeing many examples of youth leadership. So I guess, having paraphrased badly what you were saying, maybe I could invite you to share with the group your own thoughts about what those obstacles are that are preventing us moving forward, because many of us would want to be further forward than we are. And are there any great examples that you've seen from colleagues or around the world that maybe we can learn from to get us closer to those utopias? I'll start with you, Lilli, and then go around.
Thank you, Tarek. Yeah, the barriers feel quite overwhelming at times. I think there's something I wanted to highlight that I was researching just preparing for today, because one of the big barriers around skills and higher education, one of the narratives that's very dominant here in the UK at the moment is that there are less and less degrees, less and less higher education being taken up in the creative industries and across particularly the performing arts. But actually, when I looked at the figures, we have a bit of a paradox, because while the government and much of the media is very anti-creative higher education, the numbers are actually quite stable or growing. At the same time, so literally design, creative and performing arts degrees, we're back to, we're at 189,890 took up a degree last year, which is nearly 4,000 more than in 2015-16. So it's not the full picture is actually more complex as to what's going on. So some of the barriers, I think we need to keep, that demand is there, we need to keep investing in that, we need to tell that story. We need to integrate more work-based learning into those degrees so that graduates have the skills that employers want in the performing arts and get students degrees that they can make the most of. And I think that's really recognizing that across the performing arts, you know, for every performer on stage, there's that classic stat that there's 9 or 10 people behind the scenes in roles, both creative and, I put it in brackets, non-creative in our sector. So I think sometimes there's kind of, these barriers aren't necessarily what they look like, and we kind of get lost in the narratives of doom. So yeah, I think there's green shoots in higher education.
And Lilli, just to follow up a little bit on that, I mean, if you listen to, I mean, all our contexts are very different. So I'm conscious, you know, some delegates here come from an environment that is extremely supportive of the performing arts, and others where it is, as say, almost actively hostile. I mean, in this country, we've got a prime minister who only talks about maths when it comes to education across the board. I'm just wondering what can be done to change that climate, because it's not seen as a secure career for many people, where funding is not great for, I speak only for myself, some of us ethnic minorities were not encouraged to go into those jobs sometimes because it's not considered a kind of secure post to take up. How can we shift the dial on that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, at a policy level, there are some big changes happening. There was a new creative sector vision published just last week, and there's something called the Cultural Education Plan, which is currently out for consultation, both of which have some really great stuff in them that might help with creating that security. But I mean, on your point about the informality of, you know, a very non-meritocratic career path, the instability of freelance work and very insecure wages and low wages, you know, how do you change that narrative that you're lucky to work in the arts, that you're lucky to be a performer, to pursue your passion? How can we change that to these are careers, these are proper jobs that need much, much better treatment? I think that's, yeah, I have some thoughts, but it's a huge challenge because it's not just about us in our sector talking to ourselves. It spills over, as you said, to how do we talk to parents, how do we talk to the wider influences around young people, enabling and encouraging them to step into an organisation like Contact or Company 3 in my neighbourhood in North Islington, where they will be given a voice and shown how their creativity could lead to a fulfilling career.
Thanks, Lilli.
That's enough for me.
Keisha, so barriers and great examples of how we can overcome them.
Yeah, I think it's a lot around perception. I was just sat here just trying to formulate my ideas so that I don't come across as too like philosophical, but that is where I'm at, because I think really basic things like language or people's understanding of the arts or why you get into the arts is where the barriers lie. And this kind of binary rhetoric is not helpful. So, like you were saying, maths, and I was like, oh, because I'm trained as a maths teacher. I did
engineering.
Yeah, exactly. I did politics and philosophy at uni. Like, I love the arts, and it never felt like a choice for me even. I was like, it was inherent. I love the art. I've always gone to cultural spaces. Like, it's not, I don't have to choose. And so many of our young people that come into our space and come into our young company, I don't want them all to come out and be actors. Some of them come to us and they're already training to be doctors, and then they run off and they start a social enterprise or they get into tech. Do what you want. Like, I do not want to tell you what you should be, but I want you to come into my space and become a critical thinker, see yourself as a holistic person that can create, that you can collaborate with people, and that you have agency in this world, that you can go back out and make impact in whatever way that you want, and that can be creative. But I'm not interested in trying to keep you in the arts. Or the way that we work anyway is we work across sector anyway. Like, we connect with, like, and we do a lot of stuff around health and well-being at Contact. So I'm just about getting other people to understand the value of young people, the value of creativity. We see all these reports all the time with people shouting out for this, shouting out for that, and it's there, and just the dots are just not being joined. So it's just about that proactivity. And yeah, so I think it is very much about perception changing, challenging things as basic as language, inviting young people into your space and giving them that abstract space for them to understand themselves in the world and then go back out and be like, I will make change.
And in terms of so those of us can learn, in terms of a context like Contact, where you do this day in, day out, and there's a real focus, what do you put in place in terms of infrastructure to make that happen? Is it about training for the teams? Is it about recruiting young people like yourself who've come through the system, so they've got the lived experience of what that's like? I suppose that's the first part. And the second part was, if you look at the statistics, we all know that young people obviously engage in culture every day in multiple ways. We all know that. But if you look at the investment in cultural organizations, many of them are not engaging with young people in their infrastructure in a significant way. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, so again, I'm really grateful that Contact gets referenced as a great case study because of the things that we do, like having a youth panel and a senior panel for every single member of staff. If those two panels don't agree, it genuinely goes back out to we re-recruit. We have 50% of our board at the moment that's under 30. And the thing that I want to get at before I go any further is that they're all things that are quite measurable and tangible, right? But it's the culture. So that's stuff that we can talk about, but actually we just have young people bobbing around all the time, and if we disagree or we want to know what they think, we'll just pinch them and bring them in the office and be like, what do you think about this? Da, 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 da. And they know that they can come and speak to us about anything, and it's not just about the arts. And how do you foster that? I'm not sure.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah, it's having that mentality, and we do training and whatever else, but it's really hard for me to sit here and be formulaic about that. So apologies, but I think, again, it's about the people at the core of the organisation having a genuine understanding of what they mean when they say young people and not homogenising. So most recently, we've just launched a new website with some new copy. I said, get rid of the phrase young people, because it's not helpful. I know what I mean when I say young people, but I know that when other people read that, God knows what they're thinking. So we're saying all sorts like new generation, blah, 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 invest in the future, like all this stuff, but we do not say young people because it's just, as you said, outside of our bubble. It just means something else. And I do not want to diminish or pander to any kind of stereotypes or, again, go back to homogenizing young people. But in terms of like what can other organisations do, I think people might be a bit surprised when I say this, but for some organisations I've said, don't come on my territory because you'll do it badly. You don't know what you're doing. It's not your specialism. You're going to pretend or perform to be inclusive or understanding of young people. You won't be, and actually then it will be quite damaging for them. So what you should do is just stay in your domain, be really good at that, but then it's a consultation, it's a partnership. We're good at the young people stuff. So whatever it is that you're trying to do, come and speak to us. We'll give you some young people, we'll do some consultancy with you, we'll do a co-pro, whatever, but don't try to be what you're not.
Thanks, Keisha. Jodi, barriers or great examples?
Yeah, I was just thinking about when I joined Grey Eye 13 years ago. When you love something, you stick with it. I remember asking our artistic director, like, oh, we don't have a young company? Like, we don't have a youth theatre? And it was explained to me that, no, the role of our organisation was to make sure that other youth theatres that already existed were accessible and were inclusive, were diverse. And then it got to the point that we were having so many people come to us saying that youth theatre wasn't accessible that we then went, well, basically we're being asked, aren't we, let's start a young company. But it was like never the idea to go, let's, like you were saying, Keisha, like it's not about becoming an actor. It's about that sense of belonging. Going, here I am, I'm welcomed, I have the support around me, I've got access workers. Some of our young people are working with sign language interpreters for the first time in their life because they are deaf, but they have been in segregated education, which is my term for SEN education, which that term needs to be completely banned. It's othering. But I think, you know, young people were coming to us saying, we need something and we need our space. And so we now cultivate our space to be about just getting on and being an artist, being a young artist. And also thinking about, beyond grey eye, what do you want to do, or where do you want to be, or what sort of experiences do you want to have? So it's very much about us being able to provide those other experiences, bringing in practitioners. It's not always me directing, it's other practitioners coming in, it's role models where people can see themselves reflected back. And from there, then they have this sense of belonging and leadership and confidence, and then they can decide who comes into their space or where they want to go from there. So what we don't want to do is go, here is this bubble where all young deaf and disabled people are and do their thing. When we do a show, we go out to the main stages. We work with regional theatres, local theatres, regional theatres, and go, let's use it as a curtain raiser experience, to 500 people. And sorry, I just realised I didn't finish my sentence before about some of the young people working with interpreters for the first time. The fact that, some of them are 19 years old and have never had access to sign language interpreters in their education. And so the massive gap, huge gap of experiences that are facing these young people. And we also go beyond just our creative space and think about the wider issues that are affecting families and children and young people under austerity 15.6 or whatever version we're up to, and finding out what they need, what do families need to be able to get to us, how do we make sure that when we're putting in funding applications, we are making sure that we're covering travel. We have a discretionary access pot for anyone who has gaps in their social care budgets. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, actually. But we do. And it's a good thing to have, because sometimes that can be the difference between someone coming to your theatre or coming to your space and contributing to your organisation or not. Because it's that fact of, and I think I just want everyone to kind of, even if you're not aware of some of the issues facing deaf and disabled people, go off, read about the social model, the radical model of disability, read about the issues facing families and children and young people who it's waking up in the morning and planning the day. So many times it's like, we've got an email come through, I'll come to our show on Thursday. I mean, the preparation that needs to go into social stories, easy reads, getting people comfortable with a space, making sure that we've done our job to make sure that spaces are welcoming when people get there, that the show's going to be accessible. And it's not just a simple, we'll just bring our young people to come and see a show. The shows aren't accessible. And so sometimes I worry if Grey Eye, and there are other organisations as well who are doing amazing work with young people and embedding access. Nikki, who was speaking yesterday, doing amazing work, always accessible. And I think if you know about those wider issues, that completely switches your attitude, and rather than going, we don't quite have enough money to do that, you're basically saying you're denying access to someone. So if you're changing your attitude and thinking, this is a human right, going back to what I said before, then the whole attitude changes so you can be proactive in that moment. And then you're accessible for everyone.
Jodi, it makes complete sense, and it really chimes. I mean, at BAC, we became a fully relaxed venue with support from Tourette's Hero a few years ago, and we really felt how changing the sort of disability access for all ages really encouraged young people to come into the building and others. I suppose I'm reading between the lines that, when you work out with Grey Eye, you feel a slight frustration that, lots of these buildings have great capital plans and so on, but actually, in all the ways that matter, are still very inaccessible. Yeah. How do we collectively change that meaningfully over the next 10 years? Like, what really needs to happen?
I mean, I would love it if the work that myself and my colleague Meta do in training and learning, if 75% of that could be about being creative, supporting leaders, young leaders, rather than delivering training to everyone who's doing an MPO application. Or, I mean, we do it, of course we do it, we want to help change the industry, but some people are coming back to us for the third or fourth time, and we kind of have to go, look, the tools are there, there's a blueprint that exists out there about what accessibility means, true accessibility and inclusion. And I don't know, I suppose it's just continuing to, I feel like I'm always, and we always say this at Grey Eye, we're like always beating the drum, and it's always, oh, here we go again, we're going to talk about this again. And that's just what we have to do, because there's always new people coming through the industry. And I think, going back to your question, Tarek, I think if you have new people coming into your organisation, make sure that that training and that ethos, you know, have that in your business plan, and make sure that is being passed on to other new members of your organisation, and that they have a belief and a commitment to that principle and to that ethos.
Great, thank you so much, Jodi. Maria?
Yeah, so much could be said about that. Just to take us back to the education field that I work for, one of the reasons why change is really difficult in that sector is that very, very often it has to take place in huge, huge organizations. If you're lucky, it is, you might deal with an art academy that has maybe 1,000 or 2,000 students, but very, very often there are faculties within huge structures with 40,000 students, and those tankers don't move fast. So for the leadership of the art faculties, the art practice faculties, that is an incredible stumbling block and real obstacle for moving forward, as they are seeing, of course, that they need to offer something completely different to, as I said, a society that, in fact, literally, I heard this week, calls them up and says, you are not offering the skill set that we need, and you should. So, you know, that's a conversation that is going on right now between the cultural and creative industries and the art universities, which is really interesting. So that's, there is an opportunity in that, of course. And another, I think part of this sort of being slow and big and slow has to do with also some of the methods. I hear in the performing arts as an obstacle sometimes mentioned the one-on-one teaching method, which means that people have very, very long contracts, and students might not be exposed to a lot of people in the teaching, which is still very, very common, certainly in music. So that is an obstacle to broadening minds to new thinking. And at the same time, students enter into their education, and I have been told by our members often that the students are quite risk averse. So they come in having been trained in their high school with a sort of economically driven model of where am I going to be able to make a living, what kind of career. Parents often push a certain idea, and I think you were alluding to that a little bit yourself, Tarek. And that is, of course, really hard if you're offering an interdisciplinary program at a university and the students are saying, no, I just want to be this one discipline thing, and then go out and get a job, because that's what I'm supposed to do. So that's, and on obstacles, there could be lots more obstacles. I think what I've also heard from the colleagues is the collaboration between education and the field could be much more intense. That is one opportunity, and I think some of really good examples are here in the hall, where education and the field are in the same space, and therefore there's sort of a system of when it works, of osmosis, that the young people almost automatically merge into the processes of the very, very large and bureaucratic institution. But another opportunity that I'm seeing now, and I think that the performing arts could embrace even more, is this whole conversation about skills and skills gaps, which at least at the European level is being very heavily funded now, where the cultural and creative industries have been identified as a sector that will be part of the transformation that the EU has set for itself in its agenda. And they're creating all sorts of programs around innovation and development. And as Art University Network, we have sort of clammed onto that because we felt really strongly that the art universities should be and must be in that. And so we are partnering in all of those things, at least to have a voice at the table. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think this is also a conversation that's going on in the UK, also in the broader educational sector.
Well, it's good to hear about those opportunities, Maria. I guess I'm interested in what you were describing initially, which is these sort of very large teaching organizations, almost like super tankers. And I think at a time of high inflation, there's always natural consolidation of organizations generally. I guess I wonder, like with these very large institutions that really do a lot of the teaching and training, I may be wrong, but I don't get a sense there's a lot of youth leadership or a lot of youth representation or a lot of youth power in those organizations. Sometimes students have power as customers almost, transactionally in that. But do you think there needs to be a radical shift in how these organizations are run, or do you think broadly speaking it's in a good place?
No, I think there must be much more student voice involved in the leadership of these organizations. There are some really, really good examples that I have seen where that is being attempted and where it works. We're doing the same with our own organization now to really address also this topic of intergenerationality within the institutions, but in the sector as well, which I think would help a lot. But I think it's complicated. I also hear a lot of talk about a workload that students have that doesn't allow them to do other things. So you have to really workload their time spent on leadership duties and so on. And I think those are models that need to be developed because there needs to be a really big step taken by society in the next 10 to 15 years. And all solutions have to be radical, I think.
Great, thank you so much. All right, guys, over to you. Any questions for our panel, please? Let's start with Dave. I don't think we've got mics. I think. Oh, they're coming around. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start at the back then, and we'll come back around. Thank you.
Hey, my name's James Varney. I'm an artist based here in Manchester. It was very refreshing, Keisha, to hear you talk about your plan to not be at Contact in 10 years' time. As a fan of your leadership of Contact, I'd like to add. What can we do to convince other holders of structural power in arts institutions to have the faith that you have in the next generation and be willing to hand over that power rather than feel a duty to act as custodians of the next generation? And that's to everyone.
Oh, do you know what? When you said that, I'm so ridiculous because I literally just like, well, they just need to connect with their inner child again. They need to just free themselves up. Yeah, I suppose it's that thing of, how do you get people to free up the power? I mean, if we knew that, the world would look very different, wouldn't it? So you're asking me a very difficult question there. But I think, again, it comes back to value and also just being very understanding of why someone is being resistant. Because very often, people are not malicious. Do you know, it might be that someone is trying to protect their salary. Everyone wants that level of security. It might be that someone came into the organisation and really wanted to get an idea through, and still 7 years later, they've not managed it, and they need to just prove that they will do this thing. So there are so many reasons why people will hold on to power, and also the thing that's terrifying about it is those people who hold those spaces are usually not interrogated or held to account. So when you say to them, you're very powerful, they're like, oh, me, really? And I've spoken to so many people. And no offense to anyone who this is their experience, but I was on a program around leadership and we had to go and speak to different leaders around the country. And so many of them were like, I worked to get here. I worked to get here. And we were like, no, your dad owned the theatre and you were making the coffees and bringing them to the board meeting, and then you got, like, we were like, no. So some people really don't actually understand the privilege or the position that they've taken up and then don't realise that they're defending it. And I think if you can get someone to just have that personal reflection and not push them into any kind of space where they have to make any kind of decision, hopefully they'll come to that conclusion themselves, or they'll come to something that feels right for them, because it's just about opening space. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking a lot now, but I just wanted to make another point that I was in a meeting last year which was talking about, the artistic director role is under threat. And I was like, well, that might be good, actually. If it means that some people are bringing in associate directors and trying to speak to other people, or they're doing, like, community consultation, then I'm not really bothered about that. Like, why are you bothered about the title? Just what are you doing in your organisation? If your title has changed from artistic director to creative director. So, yeah.
Thanks, Keisha. Other questions?
Can I answer that one
Yeah,
as well?
of course, yeah.
I won't be the first to suggest it, but you said, it's perception and expectation management. I think boards in the UK arts and cultural sector have a lot to answer for. There are almost never any terms set when recruiting leadership. And there's some great research out there on different models of leadership now, and there's a lot of change, particularly not really post, but after, as we come through COVID, in leadership. So I see hope for people putting a 5-year term on those big jobs and embedding a recognition of the power and privilege that they hold. I feel like boards really need to step into that space. Sorry.
Yeah, great, thanks. There was another one in the back, and then we'll work our way forward slowly.
Oh, that's it.
Hello, my name is Liam. I'm an artist, and one of the things that I know that myself and various colleagues in the young person role here have been encountering is that in Britain, a lot of arts funding for young people is for 18 to 25-year-olds, which is an extremely limited time period to be able to develop. And then once you turn 26, you're effectively then told, go out into the world, you're an artist now. And that excludes a lot of people who don't have the opportunity to, at 18, say, yeah, I want to work in the arts. What are your ideas and hopes for how to shift that model? Because I know it's often tied to funders and different charities. How can you as arts leaders shift that?
Who wants to take that?
I mean, one thing that from the education perspective, we've done some research on that as well, and that very much mirrors what you're saying, that the preparedness for being ready to go out there and be an artist and possibly having an independent practice needs to be prepared for that. That needs to happen at a much earlier stage. In fact, from day one of the education, because in the end, we've done a small study, but more than 70% of graduates end up in an independent practice within 1 year of graduating. But many have indicated that they're not ready for it, they haven't been readied for it. Whereas that could, of course, be done from day one, and there can be models and modules and micro-credentials offered that wouldn't be so hard. So it's a really good point, and I think, I'll say immediately that my ecosystem should definitely play a role in that. I think the field as well, offering opportunities immediately to get to work, not just as an usher or behind the bar, but really inside the organizations and in the creative processes that go on in the organizations.
Very briefly, Lilli, because we'll stop for a second.
I agree with you. I think these age brackets and drop-offs, they're basically discrimination. I don't quite understand how they're still legal. Ageism is not okay. And they also don't reflect how artistic careers are built. depending on your art form, people start their practice perhaps at school if they're lucky, but they might come in and out of focus with it for many decades before they're ready to and have kind of built up the wisdom and skills to really be what they want to be. So yeah, I think we need to challenge funders. We don't use any arts, any age categories, but Jerwood Arts, and I think it's something that funders are listening to more and more and moving away from fixed things, but it does need to be challenged and called out where it happens.
Right, and I'm sorry, we're nearly out of time, everyone. I'd love to take more questions, but I'm just going to end now with a very, very briefly. I'm going to ask you all, there's obviously a big international group of partners here. Give us one provocation or one action we can all take away and do collectively that's going to change things. Start with you, Jodi, and go around. Very briefly, please.
Yes. If everyone could go back to their workplace, their artistic practice, and think about the 5 barriers that they have, through societal, systematically, however it came about, identify 5 barriers that are preventing children and young people from entering your space, from making a contribution, from having leadership opportunities, and start to make an action plan around that.
Thank you.
I would say open your practice, your business to other disciplines, invite them in, work with them. There is so much to learn from people in other forms of art practice.
There's a Haitian proverb that I'm probably misquoting, but how I understand it is, after the mountains, more mountains, which I think speaks to after the barriers, more barriers. And I guess I feel like I'm at a point of understanding how things work, where I'm just going to say, sort of Finding Nemo style, just keep swimming. The world keeps changing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Love that. Yeah, I'm just going to say mentor young people. It's really basic, but that's why I'm where I'm at. I had so many people reach out to me and support me, and not in any way that's fantastical or romantic or whatever. Literally just tell them to come to meetings that are going to be really boring for both of you, but just giving them that insight. And let them know that it's reciprocal, that they're not just following you around and learning from you, that you're both learning from each other.
That's great. So I want to thank our panel so much for being part of this. Thanks to you in the audience, and hope you enjoy the rest of ISPA and keep swimming. Thank you all.
Hi there, my name's Jenny Harris and I'm from Charcoalblue Theatre Consultants. We are a multidisciplinary firm internationally that work on theatre design, stage lighting, audiovisual, stage engineering and digital services. Thank you to ISPA for having us here today. I'm a director at Charcoalblue for EMEA. I am a white woman wearing a white top, grey jeans and trying to hide my grey hair. It was lovely to see so many of you taking a tour of the new Aviva Studios during the welcome reception last night. The building will be an altogether new kind of large-scale venue. It captures the extraordinary creative vision of Factory International, with partnerships, production capacity and technical sophistication to present innovative contemporary work year-round. The venue is an opportunity to promote cultural innovation, growth, skills development and talent retention across the northern powerhouse of Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds and beyond. Part of a wider master plan for the cultural enterprise and production district, Aviva Studios will no doubt be a seismic catalyst for beneficial economic and social change. It will drive economic growth by retaining creative talent and clustering creative industry, digital and educational partners around the facility to shift the arts ecology in England, producing and co-creating new work that will enhance the UK's cultural reputation and output on a global scale. It's worth spending a few moments on what was an extraordinary brief for this extraordinary building. In 2015, when Charcoalblue won the competition to provide services for the new home for Manchester International Festival, it felt like we were witnessing a seminal moment in history of UK theatre spacecrafting. If we were to distill the brief in one sentence, the venue was tasked with enabling the full, unencumbered, unadulterated artistic and technical freedom Factory International were after, to achieve the unachievable in Manchester, to drive it home and to drive it well, to stretch anything you can think of. So think big, now think bigger, think beyond the imagination. To achieve this simple mandate within the former home of the Granada Studios, this new venue with a scale to match Factory International's scale of ambition was imagined. Aviva Studios is an ultra-flexible performing and visual arts venue, capable of operating as a theatre, a concert hall, an exhibition space, an opera house, an immersive venue, a gig space, a dance theatre. The building comprises a 1,600-seat auditorium and has a large 5,000 standing capacity subdivisible warehouse, with the ability to be used together or separately but concurrently with full acoustic separation. It is a multi-purpose with the ability to transform from a traditional seated theatre to a more flexible standing audience environment in a matter of hours, presenting the great opera, ballet and theatre companies of the world, whilst enabling the widest possible range of artists to evolve these art forms, together with popular culture, into the 21st century. A new producing and co-creation venue for our time and the future. The building will pioneer new physical and digital experiences for audiences. Its flexible form can also allow one part of the building to offer daytime experiences in a warehouse structure, with performances taking place in an auditorium-style space in the evening. The facilities ensure that work of scale can be made, tested and rehearsed, and that digital or broadcast production is embedded for the long-term future. But your journey experience begins long before entering the building, with River Square providing a large outdoor event space ideal for pop-ups, live music or markets, and the Undercroft running below the hall auditorium, creating the perfect covered external space. As you enter, you arrive at the Social, which is a network of areas including the ground floor foyer, which sits directly underneath the hall orchestra pit and the south of the warehouse. With the venue being open 13 hours a day, Tuesday to Sunday, and Festival Square having a late license during the festival, external activation and audience experience is suddenly elevated to new heights beyond the traditional realms of expectation. I'll now hand over to Kate, who's going to talk a little more around the brief and how we approach the spatial designs.
Thanks, Jenny. Hello, everybody. My name is Kate Nolan. I am a white woman wearing a blue jumpsuit and curly or maybe frizzy hair. I'm a director of Charcoalblue Theatre Consultancy based in Americas. However, before moving to our US studio, I was lucky enough to be part of the design team from the beginning, focusing on the venue design to ensure we stayed close to the brief as possible. This image that was created by Architects OMA, for me, has always clearly communicated the concept of how the brief can come to life within the building, providing a canvas for co-creation on a large scale, but also having the ability to break down when desired. Two interconnecting spaces can act as one or even divide into three venues acting at the same time. I think it's important to take a moment to reflect on the deliberate nature of the venue's connection for co-creation and inspiration. So many multi-venue buildings can architecturally feel divisive, creatively and culturally for our audiences. This aims to push those notions and boundaries, putting co-creation at the forefront, ensuring your experience can be different every time you interact with the building. The beating heart of the building is the warehouse, an epic, flexible room of breathtaking proportions and technical opportunities, taller than 4 double-decker buses and longer than a passenger jet for audiences to experience and artists to create. Designing this space was almost the simple part of the building. And when I mean simple, I mean protecting this ambitious scale and technical capabilities, no matter what. So it can be used for the type and scale of rehearsal and performances, but presentations, including exhibitions, as well as rock and pop concerts. At a scale of 33 meters by 66 meters, and at a height of 21 meters high, it has the capacity of 5,000 people standing. As Jenny said, it's thinking big. However, the subdivide within the warehouse creates an acoustically sealed area for smaller seated audiences, up to 800 people for more intimate performances. Within the possibilities of using some of the retractable seating within the hall, this can reconfigure in a number of different ways, and for a range of formats and creative possibilities. Again, allowing co-creation to exist in the space's scale in a number of ways. Through the large proscenium opening on the side of the warehouse, and when I say large, I mean 22 meters wide, is the hall. Designing in collaboration with OMA architects, we created a bold shape embracing the epic large volume and a single balcony, which doesn't compete with the more traditional 2 balcony spaces, balancing an act of epic and intimate. The shape and proportions were developed over time to ensure it works when the stage is a warehouse and when the stage was within the hall itself. The brief ambitions for the flexibility of use pushes the design of the stalls of the hall to work really hard, designing a system that allows for the stall's floor to be flat floor and to connect with the warehouse, creating this L-shaped warehouse that could go up to 7,000 people standing. Then it can transform into a 1,000-seat auditorium with seating all the way up to the proscenium, using the warehouse as the stage, or all those possibilities in between, using the adaptability of the stalls, seating, and floor to create a seated audience with a large orchestra pit, or using the front auditorium area and creating a stage within the auditorium itself, disconnecting it from the warehouse completely. Again, that disconnection can then allow up to 1,800 people standing. The design of Journey to ensure this creative ambition was met was a design reality in itself, a feat of co-creation, pushing the creative and technical assumptions to ensure the ability of design, use, and audience experience was not lost. Ultimately, ensuring the building is, as Factory International states, without limits. Inherently, buildings of this magnitude present their own set of unique challenges when it comes to technical design. So I'm now going to hand over to Paul, who's going to talk a little bit more of the technical challenges and how we faced and tackled them.
Thanks, Kate. I'm Paul Holter, and I'm Charcoalblue's stage engineering designer for this project. I'm a white male with dark hair, dressed in blue, and go by the pronouns he, him. Aviva Studios is a large-scale project with many technical challenges that have allowed us to develop some innovative solutions. As Kate has touched on, the brief demands a highly flexible auditorium that must achieve many different seating and staging formats. This image shows the hall in plan, in a fully seated format at stalls level. To the left are a series of retractable seating units with a depression in the floor slab, allowing for a continuation of tiered seating towards the stage and a crossover aisle between. This section through the hall shows a 2-part tiered circle with fixed seating throughout. The retractable seating units beneath are mobile and can be transferred to other parts of the venue, including the warehouse, to create a wide variety of alternate formats depending on the requirements of a production. The lower stall section allows the seats to be folded flat and rostra mounted above, which can be used to create a flat floor format, an orchestra pit format, and a variety of different thrust stage formats. To meet the brief, we had to ensure that the mobile retractable units could be transported from the hall to the warehouse. This meant that they would have to pass over the rostra within the seating depression. Another requirement was that the rostra should be able to be deployed and reconfigured quickly, so this meant it could not be too heavy or unwieldy. The retractable seating units weigh 7.5 tons each and impart very high loads on the floor, and this posed a challenge. to be able to move very heavy systems over a floor that can be quickly deployed. Mobile seating units are transported usually using slave trucks that lift them off the floor and impart high point loads that can't be managed usually with a lightweight deck system. We approached Master Industry, a seating specialist based in France, who have a unique system of transporting the units on omnidirectional wheel cassettes. This allows all of the wheels to be in contact with the floor at all times, and that allows the load to be spread over a much larger area. The loads, although distributed, were still very high. We worked with a German manufacturer, Hoak, to develop a system of units that could operate with a load capacity of 10 kilonewtons per square metre, and this allows the units to be transported. This was in excess of the decks that they usually manufacture, so they developed a larger extrusion just for this project to meet the required capacities. This is lightweight for crew to install, but incredibly strong. The units are now installed and the seating is in position. Here we can see the circle and the retractable seating installed. Multi-wall were engaged to supply the acoustic walls that can be deployed to separate the warehouse into two sections. Currently, these are the world's largest horizontally tracking acoustic walls, 20 meters tall each. Previously, the largest were 18 meters tall at a venue in Doha. Two sets of these walls can create a 5.3 meter gap between, and this achieves acoustic separation between the north and the south parts of the warehouse, and they have integrated doors to enable circulation. In the hall, to offer rigging to the areas adjacent to the proscenium, we initially designed large rotating towers, but in a refinement of this design, we altered these to be fixed towers with hinged gates. These can be deployed to provide structure either side of the proscenium, allowing for temporary masking or scenic elements to be mounted. And this also allows for the reduction of the proscenium down from 22 meters to a more intimate width. Coupled with overhead suspension between the acoustic shutters, we can create a variable proscenium with a suspended header piece. Over the warehouse, systems have been designed to enable a high level of flexibility when rigging equipment and scenery. There are currently 156 rigging beams and 80 floor-mounted grid stands, and we can mount hoists and winches from these. Recent information from industry colleagues working on the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool highlighted the fact that we have the capacity to achieve 1.5 times the capacity that they achieved for that production. So that gives some sense of the capability of the venue. To operate the overhead stage equipment, a global control system supplied by Tate and Kinesis is supplied. This is a system used extensively around the world and offers the ability for visiting companies and other partners to integrate easily into a widely recognized control system. And for the last few minutes, I'm going to hand back over to Jenny. Thank you.
What is striking is how many times the words large, scale, and epic were mentioned in the last 15 minutes. And it really is hard not to do so when talking about this venue. Given the distinctly overarching theme for the building, which is creative freedom on the largest possible scale. And it begs the question, given the ambition of Factory International's own work, as well as the ambition for co-creating and conversing with other organisations around the region, the country, and the rest of the world, is this venue the latest addition in a series of ultra-flexible spaces? The kind of spaces which can perhaps be described as a distinct theatrical space typology, the arts warehouse. In times of skyrocketing construction costs, materials scarcity, and climate crisis, we need to think about what we build more carefully than ever. We need to make spaces that can work extremely hard and are able to serve as many purposes for as long as possible. That can be one thing today and something different tomorrow. And in times where technology is changing everything and the performing arts landscape is evolving ever faster than ever before, how do our static buildings keep up with the change? Or, to draw from Factory International's brief, how do we create spaces for beyond what we can imagine right now? There are a number of spaces around the world that share some common characteristics with Aviva Studios. At the larger end of the spectrum, the Shed in New York. And at a much smaller scale, St. Anne's Warehouse, also in New York. and of course, Park Avenue Armoury. All responses to ambitions of impressive scale, and in their DNA, they are buildings that enable the big, the unexpected, the never seen before. Complex in their apparent simplicity. Their scale, technical readiness, and exciting flexibility opportunities play an important role in removing barriers for sharing, creating, and co-creating large, bold work. In terms of the importance for the wider cultural landscape, the arts warehouses are more than theatrical or performing arts spaces, and probably shouldn't be referred to as that. They are primarily enabling places for art forms to meet, to collide, to merge, or follow their own path side by side. Traditional theatre meets street art, meets classical music, meets installation art, meets opera, meets pop concerts, immersive experiences, ballet, digital arts, from Manchester, from the UK, from the whole world's cultural community. And this is why this venue has been so eagerly anticipated during the 8 years it's been in the making. The opportunity for creating and co-creating locally, regionally, and internationally, on par with other equally ambitious organisations around the globe, which inhabit similar spaces with attitude and personality not for the faint-hearted. Manchester has got our full attention. And to finish, watch this space for the next addition to the idiosyncratic community of ultra-flexible spaces, perhaps of smaller scale and a different response to the question of flexibility, is the Perelman Centre at the World Trade Site in New York, opening this September. We at Charcoalblue couldn't feel more privileged to have been a part of the conception, gestation, and birth of astonishing venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So just now we've asked Paul Moore, the Director of Production and Building Operations at Viva Studios, to join us today. Hi, Paul. And just to say a few words about how the technical challenges of designing for co-creation were addressed in this extraordinary building. So Paul, first question, what are the benefits of the technical infrastructure for facilitating co-creation, would you say?
I think the first thing to say is, we're an artist-led organisation, so it's about how we keep the artists being creative and how we support them. And the most important thing actually is the technical team. And those technical artisans, they've got their hands physically on the work, moving it forward, and how we make their life easy in supporting that continuation of the creative process. So a lot of that actually is the very boring bits in the background. It's how we move data around the building, around the production networks, how we allow the different departments to experiment. So you might have put a light or a motor or something in one part of the building and control it in another. And if you think as a producing organisation, we might have a piece in R&D, and that would allow an artist to experiment very quickly with new ideas and change what they're doing and see them visualised in the space. Or when we come to endpoint delivery of a production, you can have a very large-scale show, moving a lot of information around the building so that we can get bigger scale shows, and the control of that looks more invisible to the audience.
Yeah, great. I couldn't agree more. Just another question, just a quick one. Is probably a longer answer, but with your new building, what opportunities for the festival and for Manchester are you most excited about?
I think, touching back on the human side, we've just appointed a technical trainer in-house into the organisation. So they sit in our team. That's about bringing the next generation of technicians on. In the UK, there's quite a big shortage of technicians coming into the workforce. So we'll be able to train those in-house for the whole of Manchester, not just for our organisation. And then touching back on where we are with the artists, I think it's when an artist comes back again to the organisation for a second time. They've got to know the people, they've got to know that wonderful big building that we've got and all the capabilities of it. And they're really pushing that building, pushing us as an organisation, and therefore pushing their own practice as to what they can achieve and make a bigger show. I quite like, personally, the boundary between what might be virtual and what might be real, and how sort of video works or volumetric capture and how that's being developed. And again, that technical infrastructure has the ability to support that and see what it's doing.
And on the apprenticeship, the factory academy, is that across all disciplines?
Yeah, so our initial product is really simple. There's a lot of, it's getting a very frontline casual technical team in, so quite a short course, so we can get sort of 20 new casuals bookable at the bottom level every 6 to 8 weeks. And then we're going to introduce sort of a 20-week course that's much more, say, a production sound or an introduction to rigging, and sitting alongside conventional apprenticeships that will come on stream for our organisation once we've just finished getting it open and getting our team on their feet. But we can start getting new entrants directly into the workforce this autumn.
Great. And it's fantastic that it offers an opportunity for other people who maybe wouldn't usually come into the industry. It gives them that open door. That's
absolutely.
brilliant.
And our factory academy team that work sort of across the city really are reaching out into different parts of the communities and different areas of Manchester and the surrounding areas, and really sort of explain to people that there is a career in the arts without needing to use the word arts, or without, and relating it to jobs in other sectors they might use and bringing them in. And that includes a level of getting people work ready when they're perhaps not used to.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. I'm really sorry we haven't got more time I could talk to you for a lot longer about this, but that's the end of our presentation, I'm afraid. There will be refreshments that are going to be served on stalls and circle levels 1 and 3, and thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.